Oh, shalom, Shabbat shalom. Actually, one demote, you hit touch and not touch. Just wanted to share this. This will be a mini vid, a mini vlog right here. But as I'm looking for a slave ad that has Hebreos, Hebreaos or Hebre. Yeah, I think Ebreaos, Hebreos. I seen it in one of the Israelite brothers a video. It was like kind of 4 or 5 part video. I'm probably gonna have to go over that video again, take a snapshot so I can at least show you what I'm talking about. Some of you might be familiar where it actually identifies the so-called Negroes as Hebrews. They knew who we were. Right? You know, the white man, so-called white man, knew who he was buying and selling, at least the original ones, because there was a conscious effort to deny that access to our identity. You know, so in some of the earlier so-called slavery ads, right? You know, where they were looking for slaves, you know, looking for people to enslave, that they actually identified, and even in their documentation, the video's called White Man Knew Who They Were Selling or Buying. They knew who they were enslaving. They knew who the slaves were. They knew who we were. Something I have to get the name. It's out there on the YouTubes. And he points out certain information that's out there, but it's suppressed. This is why this is the real media, this so-called underground media, alternative media, whatever you want to call it, but this is I Hebrew media, and I wanted to share this with you. I've noticed this on a couple of pics and references, that there's a lot of our information, right, about who we are, that has been saved among the Afro Hispanics or our Hebrew brothers and sisters, right, of a different maybe complexion, right, and therefore because of white supremacy and the supreme delusion, we don't really see. We've been bred and misled not to see them as I people, right? As you know, we talk about black people, you know, and who's so-called black people, but we as Hebrews know that it's the so-called blacks. You know, the so-called Hispanics, or some say Latinos, as well as many of the native tribes, right? So-called Indian tribes are Hebrew people. Not saying all of them, because not all black people that were brought over here are Hebrews. And that's the point we really have to recognize. This is why it's not judging by so-called appearance, as the Moshiach, Moshiachenu, Yeshua says to us, but to judge by righteousness, right? Even the whole idea about the Negro Christos, right? The Negro, the black Christ, we find that preserved among our Afro-Hispanic people, right? Or among our Hebrew people in Central and South America, and also throughout some of the islands like, you know, Puerto Rico, the Ephraimites, so forth and so on. So that's a part of the story, but it's not saying that all the people, because somebody's from America, black in America, is necessarily saying that they are a Hebrew. They might even be Hebrew racially, but their spirit, they might have the spirit of Esau, right? Or a Canaanitish spirit. Right? You know, they have a Canaanite spirit. So that needs to be noted right there. But I noticed that a lot of our information, right? Like this one right here, this is the beast fighters, the criminals being executed here. This is actually a Wikipedia link. Let's move this over here so you can see what it says on the Wikipedia. It says damnatios ad bestias, right? Damnatios, I guess the damned, perhaps, and beast, right? But what you really are looking at right here, let's look at this right here. What you really are seeing is the early Christians, right? Or the early followers of the Moshiach, black people, right? Being fed to the lions and tigers and the beasts in the European, the Roman blood sports, in the arenas, in the circuses. You know, this was the entertainment, right? Our death, just as it was then, so it is now. There's nothing new under the sun. And you can clearly see the types right here. right? You can clearly see the types. They even have right here where other black peoples, right, were, whether they were Hebrews or not, some of them might have been Hebrews, but they had denied their identity. So they were serving this embryonic form of white supremacy, the Greco-Roman, world system, right? And we see right here, this one being, fed to some sort of a beast right here, right? And also what they did to the beast. I'm talking about the animals, the animals. But remember what they said? They said basically, they try to say that the black people are just like beasts, it's just like animals, so forth and so on. And then they also have sex with them. So you really have to, examine, you have to do some skullduggery on white supremacy. What is white supremacy thinking? So I just want to point out some of these paintings right here that I came across, because we always see some pictures of, Christians being fed to the gladiators. And what they would show you is some latter-day painting. There's another painting out there, like in the Colosseum, so forth and so on. But this is actual art and facts that have been recovered, because people were proud of these things. So they had these like mosaics and murals, put into the homes of the Boulets. Yes, they were Boulets then. Even the Boulets today are on that Greco thing, right? Not really an African or a Hebrew or really a free black thought, but a kind of how to make a boule, how to make a slave mentality. So we kind of see this right here, which is also very interesting, which is very interesting right here, right? A couple of more of these to get a wider view. You can see a wider view of this, put into the ring, right? And they do the same thing here, when we see this kind of black on black, so-called black on black violence, right? Or Hebrew on Hebrew violence, right? That's going on. And this is another one. This is a little better picture. You see the one over here. It's like this is a leopard or something like that. Just eating this brother up right here. Because we know who they put into these arenas, right? They put the Jews, the black Jews, the Hebrews, right? And the Christians. Right. And the Christians and the early Christians were Jews, were black Jews, black Hebrews. Right. They were the followers of the Moshiach Yeshua. Right. And this is before Rome accepted, Rome didn't really accept it. Christianity basically broke Rome's back. So they play the if you can't beat them, join them. And then there's the last image right here as well. Some of the gladiatorial games. And they too were predominantly right, black, so-called black people, but many of the Hebrews also among these black peoples, right? One would say, well, if they're all black people, how come they didn't join together? Because they were all different tribes and nations, right? They were all of different tribes and nations. Some were Hebrew, Hebraic, Messianic. Some of them were just African, Canaanite, heathens, Edomites, others, right? And many of them at certain times could pass for black people, right? What we call today black people, right? So, and plus Rome played the old divide and conquer while they united themselves under their Greco-Roman culture. They played the divide and conquer among different people, and that's pretty well known. So the gladiators, right? Not the gladiators. Well, yes, on a certain level. Sometimes a Hebrew who basically turned his back on his Hebrewness basically would join with the system of things. We see it today, right? There's nothing new under the sun, right? But those who were fed to the lions, the early, the black Hebrews, right? Black Jews, black Hebrews, the Christians, the real Christians who were black people were fed to the lions, right? It's not like they show you in some of these movies today. This is some of the real art and facts that they don't want to show you for the obvious reasons, right? Because it becomes so obvious when you start to, look at it, yourself. This reminds me like in so-called American slavery, right? Where they had a black man, or like in that movie Glory, where they might have a black man beat another black man, right? But they both might not be the same kind of black man. They might be each other's color, but they're not each other's kind. 'Cause otherwise they'll be able to recognize, white supremacy, and they would join together if for nothing else, and they were black, right? But that's not the fact of the matter. So we really need to grow past that paradigm, because that paradigm contributes to our enslavement, or our Stockholm syndrome. All right. So this is just one example right here that I tend to find on some of the, under other languages like French, under some of the French pictures and, some of the Spanish pictures in the Anglo-American media and History Channel. They don't really show these. They might show them from a distance. What they might do sometimes, and we've seen this often, and then we'll record it and try to zoom in. They'll show it like from some distance like that quickly, and then they might focus on this, like a light-skinned so-called brother right here. They'll focus on somebody like that. Plus, they also had this thing about having them naked. You can see this dude here has no pants on. They got some kind of homoerotic feeling out of that. The Gentiles, the Goyim, all right? But it was through this process that some of the Gentiles actually became Antipas. They turned against, white supremacy. They became, so to speak, like ones like John Brown's on a certain level, maybe not to the extreme of what John Brown did, right? Or attempted to do. But they basically saw, that truly Yeshua, our black Lord and Savior, is a true Lord and Savior, and that their whitewashed gods were false. You know what I mean? And even then you'll find some murals later on where some of them will be thrown into the ring too, as well. Because if you went against their false gods, it didn't matter if you was white too. If you go against their false gods and, speak the truth to the powers that so bloody want to be, they will throw you in the arena as well. And there's examples of many white folks, who are actually realizing the truth, speaking up to who is the black Hebrews, who's the Israelites, and how the supreme delusion of the European mind is nothing other than Satanism, Luciferianism, that white people have been deceived by the devil, who don't like them, any better than he likes so-called black people. He's against humanity. And unfortunately, people get caught up on the old skin for skin game that Satan told Yahweh. He said, basically skin for skin, in Job chapter 2, I think it's around verse 4, right? It's around verse 4, but I know it's Job chapter 2. So check it out, check it out for yourself. So anyway, shalom, shalom to him that is far off and to him that is near. Saith he who he be, divine majesty, and he will heal thee in Yeshua's name. Shalom. Rastafari.